What if I told you that the person you're looking at in the mirror is not you? That the body, the name, the history you cling to so desperately is nothing more than a costume your consciousness is wearing, a temporary arrangement of the one infinite substance? What if every person you've ever met, every conversation you've had, every wound you carry is just you, pushed out into manifestation, mirroring back the contents of your own imagination? This isn't poetry. This isn't metaphor. Blake saw it. The prophets taught it. Christ demonstrated it. And tonight, if you can suspend your disbelief long enough to truly hear what I'm about to share, you will discover that you are the author, the actor, and the entire audience of this divine drama called your life. You've been lied to. Not maliciously, perhaps, but lied to nonetheless. You've been told that manifestation is about vibration, attraction, or aligning with some external universe. You've been sold courses, crystals, and affirmations. You've been promised that if you just think positively enough, visualize hard enough, feel grateful enough, the universe will deliver. But here's the reframe that will save you years of suffering. The universe isn't delivering anything to you because you are the universe. There is no power outside of your own consciousness. No deity to petition. No cosmic warehouse sorting your orders. What you've never been told, and what I'm here to reveal, is that the entire mechanism of creation lives inside a single principle. Assumption creates reality. Not hope, not desire, not intention. Assumption. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, when you think from the end, rather than of the end, you don't attract your desire. You become it. And the world, which is nothing more than your consciousness pushed out, must reshape itself to reflect that assumption. This is not another video promising you the secret to getting what you want. This is something far more radical. This is the revelation that you have never been without the power to create your world. You've simply been using that power unconsciously, creating by default rather than by design. And the results of that unconscious creation surround you. Now, your relationships, your bank account, your health, your circumstances, all of it, every single detail, is the outpicturing of assumptions you've held about yourself and your world. Tonight, I'm going to share 21 teachings with you, 21 principles that, when understood and applied, will completely transform your relationship with reality itself. These aren't tips or tricks. These aren't techniques to manipulate the universe. These are the fundamental laws of consciousness, laws, as reliable and impersonal as the law of gravity. And just as you can use the law of gravity to build a bridge or tumble from a cliff, so too can you use these laws to build a life of magnificence or remain trapped in limitation. But before we dive into these teachings, I need to tell you some stories. Because truth isn't learned through logic alone. Truth is felt, experienced, lived. And these stories, some from my own life, some from the lives of others who have tested this law, will prepare your consciousness to receive what follows. So settle in, close your eyes if you need to, and let me take you on a journey into the invisible realm where all creation begins. The first story I must share happened to me many years ago, in my apartment in New York City. It was an ordinary evening, or so I thought. I had been studying metaphysics intensely, reading Blake, pondering the nature of reality, questioning everything I had been taught about the world. I went to bed that night with these questions churning in my mind. What is real? What is consciousness? How does the invisible become visible? And then something happened that changed everything. I found myself slipping out of my physical body, not in a dream, but in full, vivid consciousness. I rose up from the bed and looked down at my own form lying there, motionless, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was more than that body. I was the awareness animating it, but I was not confined to it. I moved through my apartment. I walked through the door, not opening it, but passing through it, as though it were made of mist. I traveled, not with my feet but with my intention, to a place I had never been. I found myself in the countryside, in the dining room of a large inn, and there I stood, fully conscious, fully aware, observing every detail: the wooden tables, the morning light streaming through the windows, the people beginning to gather for breakfast. And then a thought occurred to me. If this world around me is being sustained by my consciousness, by my mental activity, what would happen if I stopped that activity? What if I could simply still my mind completely? In that instant, I had an overwhelming urge to test this. I focused all of my attention, all of my will, on stopping the movement of my thoughts. I became perfectly still within myself, and everything froze. The people mid-step became statues. The light stopped moving. The very air seemed to solidify. Time itself halted. It was as though I had paused a film, but the film was reality itself. I stood there, in that frozen moment, and I understood something so profound that it would reshape my entire understanding of existence. The world does not exist independently of consciousness. It is consciousness. It is being dreamed into existence by the activity of imagination, moment by moment. And when that imaginative activity ceases, so too does the world. I released my focus, and everything resumed. Motion returned. People continued walking. The moment flowed forward as though nothing had happened. But for me, everything had changed. I returned to my body. And when I opened my eyes in my bed in New York, I was no longer the person who had fallen asleep. I had seen behind the curtain. I had discovered the mechanism of reality. From that night forward, I knew beyond any shadow of doubt that consciousness is the only reality. The world you see, the circumstances you face, the people you encounter, they are all manifestations of states of consciousness. And the moment you grasp this, truly grasp it, you can never again feel powerless, because you are not a victim of the world. You are its creator. Now let me tell you about a woman who came to understand this principle in a very practical way. She had injured her foot badly. The pain was intense, and she could barely walk. She came to one of my lectures on crutches, hobbling, suffering, and she asked me what she should do. I told her what I'm telling you now. Revise it, go back in imagination, and change what happened. Don't accept the injury as an unchangeable fact. Facts are not fixed, they are frozen imagination. And what imagination has frozen, imagination can melt. She looked at me with skepticism, but she was desperate enough to try. That night, she lay in bed and went back in memory to the moment of injury. But instead of replaying what had happened, she imagined it differently. She saw herself walking carefully, avoiding the obstacle, moving safely and easily. She felt her foot whole and pain-free. She replayed this revised scene over and over until it felt more real to her than the actual injury. And then she fell asleep in that assumption. When she woke the next morning, she thought she had dreamed the whole thing. She reached down to touch her foot, expecting pain, and there was none. She stood up. She walked. The injury had vanished as though it had never been. She rushed to her dresser and found her art brushes scattered and unwashed, exactly as she had left them the night of the injury. She hadn't cleaned them because of her foot, but now her foot was fine. What had happened? Reality had conformed to her revision. The past, which she had been taught was fixed and immutable, had been changed, not in some mystical, unverifiable way, but in actual, physical fact. The injury that had been so real, so painful, so undeniable, it had dissolved back into the nothingness from which it came, because it was never more than hardened imagination to begin with. This is the power of revision, and it's one of the most profound gifts you will ever receive. You are not a prisoner of your past. You are its redeemer. Every mistake, every regret, every unwanted outcome can be revised, replayed, reimagined. And when you do this persistently, reality will shift to accommodate your new imaginal act. Let me tell you about a man who came to me devastated by a business failure. He had invested everything into a venture that collapsed spectacularly. He lost his savings, his reputation, his confidence. He came to my lecture carrying the weight of that failure like chains around his neck. Everyone in his industry knew what had happened. His name was associated with loss. And he asked me, with tears in his eyes, how he could possibly recover from such public humiliation. I told him what I'm telling you. The past is not fixed. That failure exists only because you continue to give it life in your consciousness. Every time you replay it, every time you feel the shame of it, every time you expect others to judge you for it, you're making it real, again and again. But you have the power to revise it, not to pretend it didn't happen, but to change its meaning, to change its effects, to change how it lives in you. He went home that night and began the work of revision. Every evening before sleep, he would go back to the moment of the business collapse. But instead of reliving the failure, he imagined himself making different decisions. He saw himself handling challenges wisely. He felt himself being respected and successful. He didn't change the fact that the business had ended, but he changed the meaning of that ending. In his revised version, the ending was a doorway, not a disaster. It was preparation, not punishment. And something extraordinary happened. Within weeks, people began reaching out to him with opportunities. Former colleagues who had distanced themselves suddenly called to collaborate. Investors who knew of his failure began to see it differently as valuable experience rather than as a mark against him. And within a year, he was running a new venture that far exceeded his previous one. The past had been redeemed, not changed in the physical sense, but transformed in its meaning and effects. This is what revision does. It doesn't erase history, it redeems it. It takes what was bitter and makes it sweet. It takes what was a stumbling block and makes it a stepping stone. And you have this power available to you right now. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, I want to share another story with you. This one about a woman who had been estranged from her daughter for 3 years. They had argued bitterly over the daughter's choice of partner, and in the heat of that argument, words were spoken that seemed impossible to take back. The daughter had cut off all contact. The mother carried this wound every day, longing for reconciliation but convinced it was too late, that too much damage had been done. She attended one of my lectures, and when I spoke about revision, something awakened in her. That night, she didn't try to imagine some future reconciliation. Instead, she went back to that terrible argument 3 years prior. But this time, in her imagination, she responded with love instead of judgment. She saw herself listening to her daughter with an open heart. She felt herself speaking words of support and understanding. She replayed that scene night after night until the revised version felt more real to her than the original. And then one morning, completely unexpectedly, her daughter called. The voice was tentative at first, but warm. They talked for hours. The daughter said she had been thinking about her mother constantly, feeling drawn to reach out, unable to explain why the old anger had suddenly lifted. They met for lunch. They embraced. And the relationship that had seemed permanently broken was not just restored, but deepened. The mother told me later that it was as though the terrible argument had never happened. The emotional residue was simply gone. This is the mystery of revision. When you change the past in imagination, you change its effects in the present. The memories others hold begin to shift. The emotions that were trapped in that past event begin to dissolve. Reality itself reorganizes to accommodate your new imaginal act. And what seemed absolutely impossible becomes not just possible but actual. Let me tell you another story. This one from my own life, when I was studying under my teacher, Abdullah. I was living in New York, struggling financially, and I had an intense desire to visit my family in Barbados for Christmas. But I had no money. Not for a ticket, not for travel, not for anything. In the physical world, the trip was impossible. I went to Abdullah and told him of my desire. He looked at me with those penetrating eyes and said something I'll never forget. You are in Barbados. Not you will be, or you can be. You are, present tense. As though it were already accomplished. I protested. I told him I had no money, no ticket, no means to go. And he simply repeated, "You are in Barbados." At first I thought he was being mystical or evasive, but then I understood what he was asking me to do. He was asking me to assume the state of already being in Barbados. To think from that end, not of it. To occupy the feeling of the wish fulfilled so completely that it became more real to me than my present circumstances. So I did. Every day, I walked the streets of New York, but in my imagination, I was walking the beaches of Barbados. I felt the sun on my skin. I heard the waves. I saw my family's faces. I lived in that assumption as though it were present fact. I didn't hope for it. I didn't visualize it as something in the future. I claimed it as now. And then, with no effort on my part, the bridge of incidents appeared. A family member unexpectedly sent me money, not enough for a ticket, but something. Then I met someone who knew of a ship that needed crew. One thing led to another, and within weeks, impossibly, I was standing on the deck of a ship headed for Barbados. The assumption had built the bridge. The invisible had become visible. This is not magic. This is law. The law of assumption. When you assume something to be true and persist in that assumption, reality must conform. It has no choice. Because reality is not something separate from consciousness. It is consciousness made visible. Now let me take you into Scripture, because everything I'm telling you is hidden there, waiting for those with eyes to see. Take the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors. You've been taught, this is history, a story about a boy with a fancy coat whose brothers sold him into slavery. But that's the literal interpretation. And the literal interpretation kills the spirit of truth. Joseph is not a person who lived thousands of years ago. Joseph is you. Joseph is consciousness descending into the world of form. The coat of many colors represents the infinite states available to consciousness. Every color is a different state: wealth, poverty, health, sickness, love, loneliness. And consciousness puts on these states like garments. The brothers who betrayed Joseph are your own thoughts, competing assumptions, doubts, fears, old beliefs. They strip you of your desired state and throw you into the pit of present circumstances. They sell you into Egypt, which represents the world of manifestation, the world of effects. And there, in Egypt, you must learn to interpret dreams, to understand that the invisible realm of imagination is the only reality, and the visible world is just its shadow. Eventually, Joseph rises to power in Egypt. Why? Because he never forgot who he was. He never identified with his circumstances. He remained faithful to his vision, to his assumption. And in the end, the very brothers who betrayed him bowed before him. Your old thoughts, your old assumptions, will eventually bow to the new state you have claimed. This is the pattern hidden in every story of Scripture. The Bible is not history. It is psychology. It is the drama of consciousness eternally playing out. And every character, Abraham, Moses, David, Jesus, is you at different stages of awakening. When you understand this, when you truly see that Scripture is describing the mechanics of your own consciousness, you will never read it the same way again. You will see yourself on every page. You will recognize your own journey in every parable. and you will know that the promised land is not a geographical location. It is a state of consciousness, and you enter it not by traveling, but by assuming. So, now that you've heard these stories, now that you've seen what imagination can do, let me show you how it works. Let me give you the 21 teachings that will unlock this power in your own life. And I'm going to start with the foundation, the bedrock upon which everything else rests. The first teaching is this: I am is God, not a God, the God. Your awareness of being that simple sense of I am that remains no matter what else changes is the creative power of the universe. It is the substance from which all things are made. It is the name God gave himself when Moses asked, "Who shall I say sent me?" And God replied, "I am that I am." This is not metaphor. Your consciousness, your awareness of being, is God, not a part of God, not connected to God, is God. And everything you are aware of being, you become. When you say, "I am tired," you invoke the creative power, and it produces tiredness. When you say, "I am broke," you set that power to work manufacturing poverty. When you say, "I am loved," you become it. Most people use this power unconsciously, carelessly, destructively. They walk around all day saying, "I am not enough. I am stuck. I am broken." And then they wonder why their life reflects those states. But the law is impersonal. It doesn't judge your assumptions. It simply makes them real. The moment you realize that I am is God, you will become very, very careful about what you attach to those two words. Because whatever follows I am is a command to the creative power within you. It is a decree. And the universe, which is nothing but your own consciousness, pushed out, must obey. Think about this. Right now, who do you say that you are? Not to others, but to yourself in the privacy of your own mind. What labels do you wear? What definitions do you accept? These are not neutral descriptions. These are creative acts. You are imagining yourself into those states every moment of every day. I knew a woman who constantly said, "I am always sick." It was her identity. She wore it like a badge. And sure enough, she was perpetually ill. One ailment would clear, and another would appear. When I met her, I asked her to stop using that phrase. She looked at me as though I was mad. "But it's true," she protested. "I have a weak immune system. The doctors say so." And I replied, "The doctors are reading the evidence of your past assumptions. They're telling you what you've created. But you can create differently starting now." I taught her to say instead, "I am healthy, I am strong, I am vibrant with life." At first, it felt like a lie to her. Her body seemed to contradict it. But I told her to persist. Say it anyway. Say it especially when you feel sick, because that's when you need to redirect the creative power most urgently. She did. She began to monitor her inner speech vigilantly. Every time she caught herself about to say, "I am sick," or "I am weak," she stopped and revised it. Within weeks, something shifted. The chronic symptoms that had plagued her for years began to fade. Within months, she was healthier than she had been in decades. The doctors were baffled. But she understood. She had changed what she was conscious of being, and her body had no choice but to conform. This same principle applies to everything. If you say, "I am poor," you are commanding poverty into existence. If you say, "I am unsuccessful," you are manufacturing failure. If you say, "I am alone," you are creating isolation. The I am is always creating. The only question is, what are you commanding it to create? And here's the profound part. I am is eternal. It existed before you were born into this body. It will exist after this body dissolves. The awareness of being is the only constant in all of existence. Everything else, your body, your personality, your circumstances, your memories, these are all temporary costumes that I am wears. But I am itself is eternal, unchanging, infinite. When you realize this, when you truly understand that you are not your body or your history or your circumstances, but the eternal I am wearing these things temporarily, you become free. Because if you can wear these conditions, you can take them off. If you can be one thing, you can be another. The power of transformation is built into the very nature of I am. The second teaching builds directly on the first. Consciousness is the only reality. Look around you right now. The room you're in, the device in your hands, the sounds you hear, all of it feels solid, objective, independent of you. But it's not. Every bit of it is consciousness made visible. The entire outer world is nothing but your inner world pushed out and solidified. The German philosopher Fichte understood this. He said objective reality is solely produced through imagination. Nothing exists independent of consciousness. The tree in the forest makes no sound when it falls unless there is consciousness present to hear it. The stars in the sky are not there unless there is awareness to perceive them. This is not solipsism or mysticism. This is the fundamental nature of reality. And once you grasp this, once you truly understand that consciousness is the only reality, you can never again feel powerless. Because if everything is consciousness, and you are consciousness, then you are the power that creates and sustains everything. The circumstances of your life are not happening to you. They are happening from you. They are you. Let me give you an example that might help you feel this truth. Think about your dreams at night. When you're dreaming, that dream world feels completely real, doesn't it? The people in your dreams seem independent. The events seem to happen to you. You feel surprised, afraid, delighted by what occurs. But when you wake up, you realize that everything in that dream, every person, every object, every event, was you. It was all consciousness. There was no external world. It was all your imagination, taking various forms. Now, what if I told you that this waking world operates on the exact same principle? The only difference is that this dream is more stable, more persistent, more agreed upon by the collective consciousness of humanity. But it's still a dream. It's still consciousness made visible. And the moment you truly grasp this, you realize you have the same power over this waking dream that you have over your sleeping dreams. I once met a man who demonstrated this principle to me in a remarkable way. He was a businessman who needed a specific contract signed by a particular date. Everything in the external world said it was impossible. The other party was resistant. The timeline was too tight. His own colleagues told him to give up and find another opportunity. But he understood that consciousness is the only reality. He understood that what seemed like external obstacles were really just his own consciousness in another form. So he stopped fighting with the external. He stopped trying to convince or cajole or manipulate the other party. Instead, he went within. Every day, he would sit quietly and assume that the contract was already signed. He would feel the satisfaction of it being done. He would imagine the congratulations, the relief, the success. He lived in that state internally, while the external world continued to look impossible. And then, 3 days before the deadline, something inexplicable happened. The other party, who had been adamantly opposed, suddenly changed their position. They called him urgently, saying they had reconsidered, that they wanted to move forward immediately. The contract was signed exactly when he had imagined it would be. From the outside, it looked like a miracle or extraordinary luck, but he knew better. He had changed his consciousness, and the external world had no choice but to conform. This is what I mean when I say consciousness is the only reality. That business partner who seemed like an independent agent with free will was really just consciousness in another form. And when this man changed his own state of consciousness, the business partner's consciousness changed in perfect harmony. Because there's only one consciousness, appearing as many. You might resist this. Your rational mind might say, but other people have their own minds, their own will. And yes, they do, in a sense. But at the deepest level, we are all the same consciousness experiencing itself from different perspectives. And when you change your consciousness, when you truly change it, not just think about changing it, everyone in your world shifts to match your new state. They must, because they are you pushed out. This leads directly to the third teaching, and it's perhaps the most liberating truth you'll ever encounter. Creation is finished. Everything that ever was, or ever will be, already exists right now in an infinite, eternal present. You are not creating anything new. You are selecting from what already exists. Imagine an infinite wardrobe containing every possible version of yourself. Rich, poor, healthy, sick, loved, lonely, successful, struggling. Every possibility is there, existing right now as a reality. What you call creating is really just changing costumes. You're stepping out of one state and into another. The states themselves are not being created by you. They're eternal. They're already there. This is what the Bible means when it says, before Abraham was, I am. Before anything appeared in time, it already existed in consciousness, and you, as consciousness, have access to all of it. You don't need to build a future. You don't need to earn, or deserve, or qualify for what you want. You simply need to assume the state that corresponds to your desire and occupy it until it manifests in your world. Think of it like a radio. All the stations are broadcasting simultaneously. You don't create the music by turning the dial. You simply tune into a frequency that's already playing. When you assume a state, you're tuning your consciousness to a frequency that already exists. And as you hold that frequency, your external world begins to reorganize itself to match it. I had a student who wanted to be a published author. She had been writing for years, sending manuscripts to publishers, receiving rejection after rejection. She was working so hard, trying to create this future reality of being published. But she was exhausted and discouraged because it felt like pushing a boulder uphill. When she came to me, I explained this principle. Creation is finished. The reality where you are a published author already exists. You're not trying to create it. You're trying to tune into it. Stop working so hard to make it happen. Instead, start being it now. Assume you are already a published author, and let the external world reorganize to match that assumption. She didn't fully understand at first, but she trusted the principle enough to try it. She stopped obsessing over manuscripts and publishers. Instead, every day, she would spend time feeling herself as a published author. She would imagine signing books, reading reviews, receiving emails from readers. She didn't try to figure out how it would happen. She just occupied the state. Within 2 months, something unexpected occurred. A small independent publisher who had rejected her manuscript a year earlier reached out saying they had reconsidered, that they wanted to publish her book. She hadn't contacted them again. She hadn't sent them anything new. They simply changed their minds because her consciousness had changed. She had tuned into a different frequency, and reality shifted to match it. This is the power of understanding that creation is finished. When you stop trying to create and start simply selecting, everything becomes easier. You're not fighting against reality. You're not trying to force something into existence. You're simply choosing from what already is. And that choosing happens through assumption, through occupying the state that already exists in consciousness. Blake, the great mystic poet, saw this so clearly. He described all possible states as sculptures in losses halls, already created, already formed, waiting for consciousness to occupy them. He understood that we don't create states. We enter them. And when we enter them, they become our reality. The fourth teaching is the mechanism by which this happens. Assumption builds the bridge. When you assume something to be true, not hope, not wish, not visualize, but assume, you set invisible wheels in motion. Your assumption creates a bridge of incidents that leads inevitably to its own fulfillment. You don't need to know how it will happen. You don't need to figure out the steps. The bridge appears automatically. The right people show up. The right opportunities arise. The right doors open. And from the outside, it looks like luck or coincidence, but it's not. It's the law of assumption working with mathematical precision. I've seen this happen thousands of times. A woman assumes she is married to the man she loves, and within months, circumstances align perfectly to make it so. A man assumes he has the job he desires, and the company he never even applied to calls him out of the blue. A student assumes they have graduated with honors, and suddenly their understanding deepens and their performance soars. The bridge of incidents is always perfectly tailored to your assumption. You could never have planned it with your conscious mind. The path is always surprising, always creative, always beyond what you could have orchestrated, because it's not your ego doing the work. It's consciousness itself, rearranging the pieces of your world to match the state you've claimed. Which brings me to the fifth teaching, the master key to making this work. Live in the end. Don't think of your desire, think from it. There's a world of difference between these two positions. When you think of something, you're here, and it's over there in the future. There's separation, there's lack, there's longing. But when you think from something, you're already there. You're not looking at it, you're looking out from it. If you want to be wealthy, don't imagine wealth. Imagine from wealth. See the world through the eyes of someone who has what you desire. How do they think? How do they speak? How do they move through their day? What do they take for granted? Occupy that state. Live there in your imagination until it becomes more natural than your current circumstances. This is what the Bible calls the Sabbath, the day of rest. Not a day of the week, but a state of consciousness. It's resting in the assumption that it is finished. Not working to make it happen, but being it now. The Sabbath is the cessation of all labor, and the labor that must cease is the labor of trying to change the outside. Once you assume the end, you rest. You know it's done. And that knowing, that rest, is what allows it to manifest. Let me give you a concrete example of what this looks like in daily life. I knew a young man who desperately wanted to move to Paris. He had never been there, had no job lined up, didn't speak French fluently, and had very little money saved. By all practical measures, the dream was impossible. But he understood the principle of living in the end. So instead of thinking about Paris, instead of longing for Paris, instead of planning how he might someday get to Paris, he started living from Paris. Every morning when he woke up, he would lie in bed and imagine himself waking up in a Paris apartment. He would hear the sounds of the street below. He would imagine walking to a nearby cafe for breakfast. He would feel the cobblestones under his feet. He would speak French. In his imagination, he did this so consistently, so persistently, that Paris became more real to him than his actual apartment in New York. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't engaging in wishful thinking. He was occupying a state. He was living in the end. And here's what happened. Within 3 months, a series of seemingly random events unfolded. A friend mentioned a program that sent English teachers to France. He applied on a whim and was immediately accepted. They provided housing in Paris, a modest stipend, and language immersion. He found himself living exactly the life he had been imagining. waking up in a Paris apartment, walking to cafes, speaking French daily. But here's the crucial part. From the outside, you might say he manifested this through the teaching program. But that's not the full truth. The teaching program was just the bridge. It was the means by which his assumption became physical reality. The real cause was not the program. The real cause was his assumption. He lived in the end, and reality had no choice but to provide the bridge that would take him there physically. This is what living in the end means. It's not about taking practical steps, though practical steps will emerge naturally. It's not about making plans, though plans will form organically. It's about occupying the state of already having your desire so completely that you think from it, not of it. You see the world through its eyes. You feel the world through its sensations. You live the world through its reality. And when you do this, when you truly live in the end, a remarkable thing happens. You stop caring about the how. You stop obsessing over the path. You stop anxiously looking for the next step. Because when you're living in the end, you're already there. The how becomes irrelevant. The path becomes obvious as you walk it. And everything you need comes to you because you've already assumed its arrival. I want you to really feel this distinction. Think of something you desire right now. Now notice what happens in your body and mind when you think about it. Do you feel longing? Lack? A sense of distance between you and it? That's thinking of it. You're here, it's there, and you're trying to bridge the gap. Now try something different. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine that you already have it. Not that you will have it, but that you have it now. What does that feel like in your body? What thoughts arise from that place? How do you see the world from that position? That shift, that subtle but profound shift, is the difference between thinking of and thinking from. And that shift is everything. The sixth teaching reveals the secret ingredient that makes all of this work. Feeling is the secret. Not emotion exactly, though emotion can be involved. Feeling here means the sense of reality, the inner conviction that what you're imagining is real. It's the difference between wishing you were somewhere and feeling yourself there. How do you generate this feeling? Through sensory vividness. You don't just think about your desire in abstract terms. You make it real in imagination by engaging all your senses. If you're imagining a conversation, hear the voice, feel the handshake, smell the environment. Make it so vivid, so lifelike, that for those moments, it's more real than the room you're sitting in. This is not make-believe in the childish sense. This is the most mature, powerful thing you can do. Because feeling a state produces that state. The outer world is simply the crystallization of your inner feeling. Change the feeling, and you change the world. I cannot emphasize this enough. Your feeling is the creative force, not your thoughts alone, not your words alone, but the feeling tone behind them. You can affirm something 1,000 times, but if you don't feel it to be true, if there's no sense of reality to it, nothing happens. But the moment you feel it, the moment you capture that sense of it being done, everything changes. Let me explain what I mean by feeling in greater practical detail, because this is often misunderstood. When I say feeling, I don't mean emotion in the ordinary sense, the excitement or joy or relief you might have when something good happens. Those emotions may accompany the feeling, but they're not the feeling itself. The feeling is the sense of reality. It's the naturalness of something. It's the same feeling you have about anything in your life that's already manifest. You don't feel excited about the fact that you have arms, do you? You just take it for granted. It's natural. It's real. That's the feeling. That's what you're after with your desire. When you assume your wish fulfilled, you're trying to generate that same sense of natural reality about something that hasn't yet appeared in the physical world. You're trying to make it feel as real and as natural as your arms feel real and natural. How do you do this? By making it sensory. by giving your imagination concrete details to work with. The more specific and sensory you make your imaginal act, the more real it becomes, and the more your nervous system responds as though it's actually happening. Let me give you an example. Say you desire financial abundance. You could imagine the abstract concept of having money, but that's vague, hard to feel. Instead, imagine a specific scenario that implies financial abundance. Perhaps you're at dinner with friends, and when the bill comes, you pick it up without hesitation. Feel the texture of the credit card in your hand. Hear yourself saying, "This one's on me." See your friends' grateful faces. Feel the satisfaction of being generous without worry. Or imagine checking your bank account and seeing a large balance. Don't just visualize the numbers. Feel the relief in your chest. Feel yourself breathing easier. Feel the smile that comes to your face. Hear yourself thinking, "More than enough." Always, more than enough. Let your body respond to the imagined experience. This sensory engagement tricks your nervous system into accepting the imaginal experience as real. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and an actual one. When you engage multiple senses, when you feel your body responding, when the experience becomes emotionally real to you, your subconscious accepts it as having happened. And here's the key. Once the subconscious accepts it, it begins to work to make it manifest in the physical world. Your entire being, your thoughts, your behaviors, your energies, your very presence begins to align with that assumption. You start to move through the world as someone for whom that experience is real, and the world responds accordingly. I had a student who wanted to heal her eyesight. She had worn strong prescription glasses for decades. When she came to me, I asked her not to imagine getting good news from an eye doctor or imagine throwing away her glasses. Instead, I told her to imagine something very specific and sensory that would be true if her eyesight were perfect. She chose to imagine reading a book, a particular book, with small print that she couldn't currently read without her glasses. Every night, she would imagine holding that book in her hands. She would feel the texture of the paper. She would see the words crystal clear. She would read passages aloud in her imagination. She would feel the ease of seeing, the joy of not needing glasses. She made this so real, so sensory, that she could practically smell the paper, hear the rustle of pages turning. She engaged her imagination so completely that during those moments, she actually felt she was reading that book with perfect vision. Within 3 months, her prescription had decreased significantly. Within 6 months, she no longer needed glasses for most activities. Her optometrist was baffled, but she understood. She had felt the state of perfect vision so completely, so consistently, that her body had no choice but to conform to that feeling. This is what feeling is the secret means. It's not about working yourself into an emotional frenzy. It's about making the imaginal experience so real through sensory engagement that your whole being accepts it as accomplished. And once accepted, it must manifest. So when you do your imaginal act, when you construct your scene, ask yourself, can I feel this? Not just see it or think about it, but actually feel it? Can I make it sensory enough that my body responds? If not, add more detail, engage more senses, make it more specific. Because the feeling is what creates, and the feeling comes through sensory vividness and sustained attention to the wish fulfilled. Now let me share with you one of the most powerful teachings you'll ever receive, and it's one that most people overlook. Revision redeems the past. You've been taught that the past is fixed, unchangeable, set in stone, but that's a lie. The past is alive. It's living right now in your consciousness as memory, and memory can be revised. When something unwanted happens to you, a harsh word, a rejection, an injury, a failure, you have a choice. You can accept it as final, let it harden into your reality, and allow it to shape your future. Or you can go back in imagination and revise it. You can replay the scene as it should have been, as you wish it had been. And when you do this, when you revise the past in imagination and persist in that revision until it feels more real than the original event, something miraculous happens. The effects of the original event begin to dissolve. The emotional wound heals. The physical consequence fades. Reality itself shifts to accommodate your new imaginal act. This is not denial. This is not pretending something didn't happen. This is recognizing that what happened only has power because you continue to give it power through your attention and acceptance. The moment you withdraw that power and place it instead on the revised version, you literally change the past. I know this sounds impossible to the rational mind, but I've seen it work too many times to doubt it. The woman who revised her foot injury, the man who revised a business failure and watched new opportunities appear, the mother who revised an argument with her daughter and saw their relationship transform overnight. The past is not dead. It's not even past. It's alive in consciousness, and consciousness can be changed. The eighth teaching is one that will completely transform your relationships, but it will also challenge everything you believe about other people. Everyone is you pushed out. There is no independent causation outside of your consciousness. Everyone in your world is responding to your state. They are mirroring back to you your assumptions about them and about yourself. When you change your state, they change, not because you're controlling them, but because they were never separate from you to begin with. They are you in another form. They are your consciousness, pushed out into manifestation and dressed up as another person. This is what I mean when I say the whole vast world is you pushed out. Think about someone in your life who frustrates you. Someone who seems consistently difficult, resistant, or unkind. Now ask yourself, what assumption am I holding about this person? What do I expect from them? What do I say about them in my own mind? I guarantee you, they are acting exactly as you imagine them to be. The moment you change your conception of them, the moment you begin to imagine them as cooperative, kind, generous, they will change. Sometimes the change is immediate and dramatic. Sometimes it's gradual, but it always happens because they have no choice. They are you pushed out. This is the end of blame. This is the end of victimhood. You can never again point to another person and say they are the cause of your suffering. Because there is no other. There is only you, experiencing yourself in infinite forms. Let me tell you about a woman who transformed a toxic work relationship through this understanding. She had a boss who, in her words, was impossible. He was critical, dismissive, micromanaging. Every day at work was misery because of him. She had tried talking to him, tried changing her approach, tried going to HR. Nothing worked. He seemed determined to make her life difficult. When she came to my lecture and heard this teaching, she was resistant. She said, "But Neville, you don't understand. This man really is terrible. It's not my imagination. Everyone else sees it too." And I said, "Everyone else in your world is also you pushed out. If everyone sees him as terrible, it's because your consciousness has cast him in that role, and you have the power to recast him." She went home skeptical, but desperate enough to try. That night, instead of rehearsing all his faults, instead of complaining about him in her mind, she began to imagine him differently. She saw him smiling at her, complimenting her work, trusting her judgment. She imagined conversations where he was supportive and encouraging. She felt what it would be like to actually enjoy working with him. At first, it felt absurd. Her rational mind said, "This is pointless. He's never going to change." But she persisted. Night after night, she revised her conception of him. She refused to feed the old story. She stopped talking about how awful he was. She stopped agreeing when colleagues complained about him. She held in her consciousness a different version of him, kind, supportive, appreciative. Within 2 weeks, something shifted. He called her into his office, and she braced for criticism. Instead, he thanked her for her work on a recent project. The next week, he asked for her opinion on something he would normally have dictated. The week after that, he laughed at something he said. The change was subtle at first, then undeniable. Within a month, their entire relationship had transformed. And the most remarkable thing, he had no idea he had changed. To him, it felt natural, like this was who he'd always been. This is the power of understanding that everyone is you pushed out. You're not manipulating them. You're not controlling them. You're simply changing what you're projecting, and they're responding to that projection because they're made of the same consciousness you are. I want you to really sit with this. Think about the most difficult person in your life right now. The person who triggers you, frustrates you, disappoints you. Now ask yourself, who am I being in relation to this person? What am I assuming about them? What do I expect from them? What story am I telling myself about who they are? And then ask, what would it feel like if they were different? What if they were kind, loving, supportive? What if they saw the best in you? What if the relationship was easy, harmonious, joyful? Can you feel that possibility? Can you imagine them in that light? If you can, you have the power to make it real. Because they are not separate from you. They are you in another form. And when you change your consciousness about them, they must change. This is not faith or hope. This is law. I've seen this work in marriages on the brink of divorce, in parent-child relationships filled with conflict, in business partnerships riddled with mistrust. When one person changes their consciousness, the entire dynamic shifts. Sometimes, the other person seems to have a personality transplant. Sometimes they simply drift out of the person's life to be replaced by someone who matches the new state. But always, the external world conforms to the internal assumption. The reason this teaching is so challenging is that it requires you to take complete responsibility. You can't blame anymore. You can't say, if only they would change. You have to recognize that they are only the way they are because of what you're holding them to be in your consciousness. This is sobering, but it's also incredibly empowering. Because if they're you pushed out, then you have the power to change them by changing yourself. The 9th teaching takes us back into the mystical core of Scripture, the Immaculate Conception. This is not about a virgin giving birth 2,000 years ago. This is about you, right now. Every desire you have is an immaculate conception. It is conceived within you without any external cause. No person or circumstance planted it there. It arose from within, from the depths of your own being. And just as Mary gave birth to Christ, you must give birth to your desire. You are both the mother and the child. The desire is conceived in consciousness, and consciousness must labor to bring it forth. This labor is not struggle. It's simply the persistence in assumption until the invisible becomes visible. You are Mary. Your imagination is the womb, and every desire is a divine child waiting to be born. Don't abandon your desires. Don't declare them impossible. Carry them, nurture them, feel them alive within you, and in due time you will give birth, and what was invisible will become visible. The 10th teaching is the crown of the mysteries, the highest use of consciousness. The assumption is the crown. To assume is to be lifted up. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are psychologically lifted to a higher level. And when that assumption becomes fact, you find yourself on that higher level in your objective world. This is what the Bible means by assumption. The Virgin Mary was assumed into heaven, not in some distant past, but every time you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, You are lifted into heaven, a higher state of consciousness. And from that higher state, you see and experience a different world. Your assumption guides all your conscious and subconscious movements toward its suggested end. It dictates the events of your life. It determines what opportunities you notice, what people you meet, what doors open and close. Your assumption is the blueprint, and your life is the building that rises from it. This is why assumption is more powerful than willpower, more powerful than action, more powerful than anything else you could do. Because assumption operates at the causal level, and everything else is effect. The 11th teaching is one you can apply immediately, starting right now. Inner speech creates. Every word you speak to yourself in the silence of your own mind is a creative act. Your inner conversations are shaping your tomorrow even as you're living today. Most people are completely unaware of their inner speech. They walk around with a running commentary of negativity, worry, complaint, and doubt. And then they wonder why their life is so difficult. But your inner speech is the most powerful force in your world. Because unlike your outer speech, which may be polite and positive, your inner speech is usually brutally honest. And it's that honest inner speech that consciousness accepts as your true assumption. If you want to change your life, start by changing what you say to yourself about yourself and your world. Stop the inner complaint. Stop rehearsing problems. Stop predicting failure. Instead, speak to yourself from the state of the wish fulfilled. Carry on inner conversations that imply success, love, health, abundance. Make this a practice. Throughout the day, become aware of your inner talking. When you catch yourself saying something negative, stop. Revise it. Say instead what you would say if your desire were already fulfilled. This simple practice, maintained over time, will transform your entire world. Let me show you just how powerful inner speech really is by sharing some detailed examples of people who transformed their lives simply by changing what they said to themselves. I knew a woman who had struggled with weight her entire adult life. She had tried every diet, every exercise program, every weight loss method you can imagine. Nothing worked long term. But when I spoke with her, I discovered something interesting. Her inner speech was sabotaging every effort she made. All day long, she said to herself things like, "I have no willpower. I always gain it back. I'm just meant to be heavy. I can't control my eating. I hate my..." These weren't conscious affirmations. They were automatic thoughts that ran in the background of her mind constantly. She barely noticed them, but they were creating her reality more powerfully than any diet ever could. I asked her to change just one thing: her inner speech. Every time she caught herself saying something negative about her body or her eating, she was to stop and say something different. Not something she necessarily believed yet, but something that aligned with her desired state. When she caught herself thinking, "I have no willpower," she would stop and say, "I have complete control over what I eat." When she thought, "I always gain it back," she would say, "My body maintains its ideal weight naturally." When she started to say, "I hate my body," she would interrupt it with, "I appreciate my body and treat it with love." At first, it felt false to her. The new statements seemed like lies compared to the truth of her experience. But she persisted. She caught herself again and again, day after day, and revised her inner speech. And something remarkable happened. Within weeks, her eating patterns began to change without any conscious effort. She naturally started choosing healthier foods. She stopped the compulsive eating she had struggled with for years. Her body began to release weight easily, naturally, without struggle. And the change was permanent because she had changed the cause, her inner speech, rather than just trying to control the effect. Or, consider the man who came to me deeply depressed. He had been to therapists, tried medications, read self-help books. Nothing helped. His depression seemed intractable. But again, when I listened to his inner speech, the cause was obvious. He was constantly saying to himself, "Nothing matters. What's the point? I'm just going through the motions. Life is meaningless. I'll never be happy. This is just how I am." Hour after hour, day after day, he was speaking these words to himself, reinforcing the state of depression. I told him the same thing I'm telling you. Your inner speech is creating your reality. Change your inner speech, and you must change your reality. He was skeptical, depressed people usually are, but he agreed to try. Every time he caught himself saying something that reinforced depression, he would stop and say something different. When nothing matters arose, he would counter with, "Everything matters. My life has purpose." When "I'll never be happy" came up, he would say, "I am becoming happier each day." When "This is just how I am," he would insist, "I am transforming. Joy is my natural state." The first few weeks were hard. The old inner speech was so automatic, so constant. But he persisted. And gradually, something began to shift. The depression started to lift. Not dramatically at first, but in small, noticeable ways. A moment of pleasure he actually allowed himself to feel. A day when the heaviness wasn't quite as oppressive. An hour when he felt something other than numbness. Within 3 months, the depression that had plagued him for years was gone, completely gone. His therapist called it spontaneous remission. His friends thought the medication had finally worked, but he knew better. He had changed his inner speech, and his inner world had transformed accordingly. This is why I say inner speech is the most powerful practice, because it's constant. You're doing it every moment you're awake, and every word is creating. Every sentence is an assumption that will eventually manifest. Pay attention particularly to how you speak about recurring situations in your life. If you're always saying Monday mornings are terrible, guess what your Monday mornings will be? If you constantly say, "My boss is impossible," how will your boss show up? If you habitually say, "I never have time," what will your schedule reflect? These habitual phrases become self-fulfilling prophecies, not because of some mysterious force, but because they're assumptions, and assumptions create reality. When you say, "Monday mornings are terrible," you're assuming it, and then your perception, your attitude, your behavior all align to create that reality. But you can flip this. Start saying, "Monday mornings are full of possibility." Say it, even if, especially if it feels false. You're not trying to convince yourself, you're planting a new seed in consciousness. Over time, if you persist, Monday mornings will actually become different, because you'll show up differently, you'll perceive differently, you'll create differently. The same applies to any situation in your life. Change what you say about it to yourself, and you change the situation itself. This is not positive thinking in the superficial sense. This is understanding that your inner speech is causative, and consciously directing that cause toward your desired effect. The 12th teaching is sobering, but necessary. The law of identical harvest. You will reap exactly what you imagine, not what you want, not what you hope for, what you imagine. The imaginal act is the seed, and the visible world is the harvest. This means you cannot escape your own imagination. Ignorance of this law is no excuse. You may not know you're imagining. You may not know you're assuming, but you're doing it nonetheless, and you will experience the fruit of it whether you like it or not. This is why it's so crucial to become conscious of what you're imagining. Most people imagine by default, reacting to circumstances, dwelling on problems, expecting more of the same, and they get more of the same. The harvest is identical to the seed. But when you imagine deliberately, consciously, persistently in alignment with your desire, you plant different seeds. and you will reap a different harvest. This is not mysterious. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is law, as reliable as the law of gravity. The 13th teaching will free you from the tyranny of circumstances, no second causes. There is nothing outside of your consciousness that has power over you. Nothing can affect you unless you give it power through your assumption. The weather, the economy, other people's opinions, your past, your genetics, your environment, none of these are causes. They are effects. They are the outpicturing of states of consciousness. And when you understand this, when you truly grasp that consciousness is the only cause, you become free. You stop blaming. You stop waiting for things to change. You stop looking for permission or approval. Because you realize that everything in your world, everything, without exception, is responsive to what you are conscious of being. This doesn't mean you ignore facts or live in denial. It means you recognize facts for what they are. Frozen imagination. And what imagination has frozen, imagination can melt. The 14th teaching is perhaps the hardest for the anxious mind to accept. Detachment from outcome. Once you have assumed your wish fulfilled, once you have felt it real, you must let it go. You must rest in the knowledge that it is finished. This is the Sabbath rest I mentioned earlier. Most people assume and then immediately begin looking for evidence. They watch anxiously for signs. They measure their circumstances against their desire and become discouraged when nothing seems to change. But this is not faith. This is doubt masquerading as hope. True faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. It's knowing that what you have assumed in consciousness is already done, regardless of present appearances. It's resting in that knowing, without anxiously seeking confirmation. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means you stop striving and start being. You move through your world as the person who already has what you desire. You don't try to make it happen. You let it happen through you. The 15th teaching will change how you read Scripture forever. The Bible is psychology, not history. Every character, every story, every event is describing states of consciousness and the laws by which consciousness operates. Abraham is not a man who lived thousands of years ago. Abraham is faith, the willingness to believe the promise. Moses is not a historical figure. Moses is the lawgiver, the realization of the creative power of I am. Jesus is not a person born in Bethlehem. Jesus is salvation, the awakening of imagination to its own creative power. When you read Scripture psychologically, it comes alive. You see yourself on every page. You recognize your own journey in every parable. And you discover that the kingdom of heaven is not a place you go when you die. It's a state of consciousness you enter when you assume the wish fulfilled. The literalists have killed the spirit of Scripture by turning it into history. But you can resurrect that spirit by recognizing that it's all about you, happening right now, in your own consciousness. The 16th teaching is a practical technique that multiplies the power of your imagination. Sleep multiplies. The moments just before you fall asleep are the most powerful time to impress your subconscious mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. In that drowsy state, the critical conscious mind relaxes its guard. The subconscious becomes receptive, and whatever you assume in that state sinks deep into consciousness without resistance. This is why I always recommend that the last thing you do before sleep is imagine your wish fulfilled. Don't replay the problems of the day. Don't worry about tomorrow. Instead, construct a short scene that implies your desire is already realized, and loop that scene gently in your mind as you drift off. Feel yourself in that scene. Make it sensory. Make it simple. And then let yourself fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. The subconscious will work all night to make it real. The 17th teaching is for those times when doubt creeps in. Persistence wins. Your assumption, persisted in, must manifest. This is law. The length of time it takes depends only on the naturalness of your assumption. The more natural it feels to you, the faster it appears. If you assume something and it feels forced or unnatural, it will take longer. But if you persist in that assumption, it will gradually become more natural. And as it becomes more natural, it begins to manifest. Don't let temporary setbacks discourage you. Don't let the persistence of old circumstances convince you that your assumption isn't working. Persist. Remain loyal to the invisible. Stay faithful to your assumption, even when everything in the visible world seems to contradict it. I promise you, persistence wins. I've never seen it fail when someone truly persisted. The bridge always appears. The invisible always becomes visible. But you must persist. The 18th teaching connects everything back to the fundamental principle. Your faith is your fortune. But faith here doesn't mean religious belief. It means fidelity to your assumption. You are always faithful to something. The question is, what? Most people are faithful to their problems, their limitations, their unwanted circumstances. They persist in these states, not because they want to, but because they don't know they have a choice. They keep declaring, I am broke, I am alone, I am stuck, and consciousness faithfully produces exactly that. But when you redirect your faith, when you become faithful to the wish fulfilled, instead of the present problem, your fortune changes. Because fortune follows state, wealth, love, health, success. These are not external things you acquire. They are states of consciousness you occupy. Be faithful to the state you desire. Be loyal to the assumption of the wish fulfilled, and your fortune will reflect that faith. The 19th teaching redefines a word that religion has corrupted: righteousness. In the psychological sense, righteousness means consciousness of already being what you want to be. It's not about moral behavior or following rules. It's about alignment with your desire. To be righteous is to think from the end, to feel yourself to be what you desire to be. And when you are righteous in this sense, you are saved from sin. And sin, psychologically, simply means missing the mark, not being what you want to be, not having what you want to have. Righteousness saves you because when you are conscious of already being your ideal, you must become it. The law is impersonal. It doesn't care if your assumption is noble or selfish, spiritual or material. It simply makes real whatever you are conscious of being. So hold fast to righteousness. Hold fast to the consciousness of already being what you want to be. Don't let go of it. Don't let circumstances talk you out of it. And you will be saved from every unwanted state. The 20th teaching makes an important distinction: the promise versus the law. The law is what I've been teaching you, the law of assumption, the law that imagination creates reality. This law works for everyone, all the time, whether they know it or not. You don't have to be spiritual to use it. You don't have to be good. You don't have to believe in God. The law simply operates. But the promise is different. The promise is the mystical awakening that comes to those who have exhausted the law, who have used it to fulfill every desire, and then discovered that no external fulfillment truly satisfies. The promise is the realization that you are God, dreaming yourself into infinite forms. You can use the law your entire life and create a wonderful world for yourself without ever experiencing the promise. But if you're drawn to the deeper mysteries, if something in you longs to know who you truly are beyond all states and all forms, then the promise awaits you. The promise is not something you can make happen. It comes in its own time, when consciousness is ready. But when it comes, you will know beyond any doubt that you are not the body, not the personality, not the individual you thought you were. You are the eternal I Am, dreaming the dream of life. And this brings me to the 21st and final teaching, The ultimate revelation. You are God dreaming. Human imagination is God. Not a gift from God. Not connected to God. Is God. There is no separation. There never has been. You are not a separate being trying to reach God. You are God, experiencing yourself as a seemingly separate being. This is the great secret hidden in every mystical tradition. The kingdom of heaven is within you because you are the kingdom. The treasure is buried in your own field. The pearl of great price is your own awareness. You are what you've been seeking. When you realize this, truly realize it. Not just understand it intellectually, but know it experientially. Everything changes. You don't use the law to get things anymore. You use it as an artist uses a brush, creating for the pure joy of creation. You don't manifest from lack. You manifest from fullness, from the sheer delight of being the infinite creative power playing in the field of space and time. This is where all the teachings lead. Not to a better life, though you will have that. Not to getting what you want, though you will have that too. But to the awakening of consciousness, to its own nature, to the remembering of who you truly are. So now that you've received these 21 teachings, let me give you practical steps you can begin applying immediately. Because knowledge without application is useless. And the whole point of what I've shared is not to make you a better philosopher, but to make you a conscious creator. The first practice is the imaginal act. This is the foundation of everything. Choose a desire, something specific, something you truly want. Now construct a short scene that would occur if that desire were already fulfilled. Don't imagine the desire itself. Imagine something that would happen after it's fulfilled. For example, if you desire a new home, don't imagine the home. Imagine sleeping in a bed in that home, feeling the specific texture of the sheets, seeing the familiar objects around you. If you desire a promotion, imagine a colleague congratulating you, or imagine signing the new contract. Keep the scene short, just a few seconds. Make it first person. See it through your own eyes. And make it sensory. Engage sight, sound, touch, even smell if you can. The more vivid, the better. This scene becomes your imaginal act. Now let me get very specific about constructing this scene, because the details matter immensely. The scene must imply fulfillment without depicting the fulfillment directly. If you want financial abundance, don't imagine stacks of money. Imagine paying for something you've wanted with ease. Hearing your accountant say, "Your investments are performing beautifully," or receiving a call about an unexpected windfall. The scene should be a natural consequence of already having what you desire. Keep it simple, one moment, one vignette, like a single frame from a film. I've watched people exhaust themselves trying to create elaborate mental movies with multiple scenes and characters. This diffuses the power. But a single, concentrated moment repeated, persistently sinks deep into consciousness like a seed, planted in fertile soil. The scene should involve action if possible. You're not creating a still photograph. Create movement. You're embracing someone, walking through a door, signing a document, shaking a hand. Action engages your nervous system. It tricks your body into believing the experience is happening now. Your subconscious cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and an actual one. Let me give you concrete examples for different desires. If you want to heal a relationship, don't imagine the person apologizing or explaining. Imagine something that would happen after the relationship is healed. Perhaps you're laughing together over dinner, feeling the warmth between you. You hear them say something affectionate. You feel the ease and comfort of being with them. If you want a specific job, don't imagine the interview or the offer. Imagine your first day at work. You're sitting at your new desk. You're introducing yourself to colleagues. Someone says, "Welcome to the team." You feel the satisfaction of belonging, of having arrived. If you want health, don't imagine doctors giving you good news. Imagine yourself doing something your current health prevents. You're running without pain. You're sleeping deeply through the night. Someone comments on how vibrant you look. You feel strength and energy coursing through your body. The scene must always be in present tense or past tense, never future. You are experiencing it now, or it has just happened. Never I will or I'm going to. Always I am, or I did, or it is. Some people ask me whether the scene needs to be realistic, and I say, consciousness doesn't know realistic from unrealistic. It only knows what you persist in assuming. But the scene should feel natural to you. If you're trying to imagine something so far from your current sense of self that it feels forced or fake, you'll struggle to give it the feeling of reality it needs. In that case, you might need to bridge the gap. Imagine a scene that's one step closer to where you are now. Manifest that, then imagine the next step. However, I've also witnessed people make quantum leaps when they fully surrendered to an assumption, no matter how impossible it seemed. So there's no absolute rule. Follow your own inner knowing. If a scene resonates, if you can make it feel real, use it regardless of how improbable it appears from the outside. Once you have your scene, repetition is key. You'll loop this scene in your mind, but not mechanically. Each repetition should deepen the feeling. Notice new details. Feel the textures more vividly. Hear the sounds more clearly. Let the scene become increasingly real with each pass through it. Many people find it helpful to add a single phrase, something someone says in the scene, or something you say to yourself that captures the entire feeling of fulfillment. When I wanted to be a successful lecturer, my phrase was someone saying, "That changed my life." That one phrase contained all the satisfaction, impact, and accomplishment I desired. When I repeated my scene, I would hear that phrase and immediately access the complete feeling state. If you use a phrase, make it present or past tense. You did it. I am. This is perfect. Never future. Never will be or going to. Because you're living in the end, where it's already accomplished. The second practice is the state akin to sleep. This is the most powerful time to do your imaginal act. Every night before you fall asleep, lie in bed in a comfortable position. Close your eyes. Let your body become still. Feel yourself sinking into relaxation. Now enter your imaginal act. See the scene. Feel it. Hear it. Make it as real as you can. And then loop it. Play it again and again. Gently, without force. Just keep returning to it. Feeling it. Experiencing it. And as you do, let yourself drift into sleep. The last thing your consciousness registers before sleep should be the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Don't worry if you fall asleep before the scene is finished. That's actually ideal. You're impressing the subconscious in its most receptive state. Just do this every night, consistently, persistently. Let me explain why this drowsy state is so powerful. When you're falling asleep, the critical, analytical conscious mind begins to relax its guard. The gate between the conscious and subconscious opens. In this state, suggestions bypass all resistance and sink directly into the subconscious, which is the realm where all creation actually occurs. Your conscious mind can argue, doubt, and question, but your subconscious accepts without judgment. It takes whatever you give it and begins the work of manifestation immediately. This is why the moments before sleep are sacred. What you impress upon consciousness in this state will work on you all through the night, rearranging the pieces of your world to match your assumption. Here's how to maximize this practice. Begin your nighttime routine with the intention of entering your imaginal scene. As you prepare for bed, start disengaging from the day's activities and concerns. Don't watch disturbing news or engage in stressful conversations right before sleep. You want to arrive at your bed with a calm, relaxed mind. Get into bed and lie in a position that's comfortable enough to relax completely but not so comfortable that you'll immediately fall into deep sleep. Many people prefer lying on their back with arms at their sides, but find what works for you. The key is to be comfortable and still. Close your eyes and begin to relax your body systematically. Start with your feet. Feel them becoming heavy and warm. Move to your legs, your hips, your abdomen. Let each part soften and release. Move up through your chest, your shoulders, your arms, your neck, your face. Feel yourself sinking into the bed, becoming heavier and more relaxed with each breath. As your body becomes still, let your mind become quiet. Don't fight thoughts if they arise. Just let them pass like clouds. You're not trying to achieve a blank mind. You're simply creating a calm, receptive inner space. Now, gently enter your imaginal scene. Don't force it, don't strain. Just step into it as naturally as you would step into a memory. See what you would see, hear what you would hear, feel what you would feel. Make it sensory and real. Loop the scene softly. Play it through. Then start again. Each time, let it become more vivid. Let yourself sink deeper into the experience. You're not watching yourself in the scene from the outside. You are in it, experiencing it firsthand. As you repeat the scene, you may notice your body responding. You might smile. Your heart might warm. You might feel a sense of relief or excitement. These physical responses are good signs. They mean your nervous system is accepting the imaginal experience as real. Continue looping gently as you feel yourself drifting towards sleep. Don't resist sleep. Welcome it. Let yourself slide into sleep while still in the scene, still feeling the wish fulfilled. The last conscious impression before you sleep should be the feeling of your desire being already accomplished. Some nights you'll achieve this perfectly. Other nights, you'll fall asleep quickly or your mind will wander. That's okay. Don't judge yourself. Just begin again the next night. Persistence matters more than perfection. If you find your mind wandering to problems or worries, gently redirect it. Don't fight the unwanted thoughts. Simply return to your scene, again and again. This redirection itself is training your consciousness to dwell in the state you desire, rather than the state you want to leave. If you wake during the night, use that opportunity. Don't lie there rehearsing problems. Enter your scene again. Loop it until you drift back to sleep. Every time you impress the subconscious with the wish fulfilled, you're strengthening the assumption. Some people ask whether they should do this practice in addition to sleep or instead of sleep. And I say, this is not separate from sleep. This is how you fall asleep. You're not staying awake to do a practice. You're using the natural process of falling asleep as the vehicle for impressing consciousness. The practice and the sleep become one continuous experience. And here's something profound. When you fall asleep in the state of the wish fulfilled, you carry that state into your dreams. Your dreams may begin to reflect your assumption. You may dream experiences that align with your desire. This is consciousness working at the deepest levels, reorganizing your entire inner world to match your assumption. The third practice is revision. Every night before sleep, or at any time during the day, when you become aware of an unwanted event, revise it. Go back in your imagination to the event, but don't replay it as it happened. Replay it as it should have been. If someone spoke harshly to you, imagine them speaking kindly. If you failed at something, imagine yourself succeeding. If you felt fear, imagine yourself feeling confident. Don't judge yourself for what happened. Don't analyze it. Just revise it. Change the memory. Make the past conform to your ideal. Do this persistently. Revise every unwanted event, every mistake, every regret. and watch as the effects of those events begin to dissolve. Watch as your future changes because you've changed your past. Now let me teach you the art of revision in greater depth, because this practice is one of the most transformative tools you'll ever possess. Most people think the past is dead, fixed, unchangeable, but the past is alive. It lives in your consciousness as memory, and that memory continues to create effects in your present moment. When you revise the memory, you change its creative power. Here's how to do it effectively. At the end of each day, before you enter your imaginal scene for sleep, review your day, not judgmentally, but as an observer. Notice what happened. Notice particularly the events that disturbed you, disappointed you, or left you feeling less than you want to feel. Choose one event to revise. Don't try to revise everything at once. Pick the event that bothers you most, or that seems most significant. Now, go back to that event in your imagination. See it clearly, the place, the people, what was said or done. Re-enter that moment fully. But now, instead of replaying what actually happened, you're going to rewrite it. You're going to create a new version where things went the way you wish they had gone. This is not denial. This is redemption. You're taking the creative power away from the unwanted event and giving it to your ideal. Let's say you had an argument with someone you love. In revision, you go back to the beginning of that interaction. But this time, you see yourself responding with patience and love. You hear yourself speaking words that create harmony instead of discord. You see the other person's face softening. You feel the warmth between you. You experience the conversation ending in understanding and affection. Replay this revised version several times. Make it vivid. Make it real. Feel the relief of it, the rightness of it. Let the revised version replace the original version in your emotional memory. When you think about that day in the future, you want the revised version to be what comes to mind, not the original. Or perhaps you made a mistake at work, said the wrong thing in a meeting, forgot an important task, missed an opportunity. In revision, you go back to that moment. You see yourself performing perfectly. You hear the words coming out of your mouth confidently and correctly. You see others nodding in agreement. You feel competent and valued. You watch the situation unfold beautifully. The more you revise, the more natural it becomes. You're training yourself to refuse to give power to unwanted events. You're teaching yourself that nothing is final until you say it is. Every event can be redeemed. Every mistake can be corrected. Every harm can be healed, not by changing what happened physically, but by changing its meaning and its effects through imagination. Here's something important. When you revise, you may notice that other people's memories begin to shift too. I've had students tell me they revised an argument, and the next day, the person they argued with acted as though the argument never happened. Or they revised a failure, and people began treating them as though they had succeeded. This is because others are you pushed out. When you change your consciousness, they change. But even if the external evidence doesn't immediately shift, the revision is still powerful, because you're changing how that event lives in you. You're changing the emotional charge it carries. You're neutralizing its power to create more unwanted experiences. The past only has power over your future because you keep giving it that power through your attention and acceptance. Revision withdraws that power. You can also revise events from long ago. That trauma from childhood, that failure from years past, that regret you've carried for decades, you can revise it. Go back in imagination to that time, but see it differently. See yourself being supported, protected, successful, loved. See the outcome you wish had occurred. Feel it. Experience it. Make it more real than the actual memory. This may seem like self-deception to the rational mind, but ask yourself, is holding on to the painful memory serving you? Is rehearsing the past trauma helping you? Is dwelling on the mistake creating a better future? No. All these things are keeping you bound to an unwanted state. Revision is how you free yourself. And here's the mystery. When you persistently revise the past, you actually seem to change it. Not in the sense that you travel back in time and alter physical events, but in the sense that the effects of those events dissolve. The wounds heal, the patterns break, the karma, as some would say, is burned up. Reality reorganizes itself to accommodate your new imaginal version of the past. Make revision a nightly practice. Review your day. Revise what needs revision. Then enter your imaginal scene for sleep. This combination, revising the unwanted past and impressing the desired future, is extraordinarily powerful. You're simultaneously clearing out the old and planting the new. The fourth practice is inner speech discipline. Throughout your day, become aware of what you're saying to yourself. Notice the running commentary in your mind. And when you catch yourself saying something that contradicts your desire, stop. Consciously change it. If you catch yourself thinking, "I'm so tired," change it to, "I am energized." If you think, "I can't afford this," change it to, "I am abundant." If you think, "Nothing ever works out for me," change it to, "Everything works for my good." This takes vigilance. Your old patterns of inner speech are deeply grooved. But every time you catch yourself and revise your inner talking, you're creating a new groove. You're establishing a new assumption. And over time, this new assumption will become automatic. Now, let me teach you how to truly master your inner speech, because this is perhaps the most practical and immediately applicable of all the practices I'm sharing. Your inner speech is constant. From the moment you wake until the moment you sleep, you're talking to yourself, commenting, judging, interpreting, planning, remembering, and every word of this inner dialogue is creative. Every sentence is an assumption that consciousness will eventually make real. Most people are completely unconscious of their inner speech. If you ask them what they've been saying to themselves all day, they couldn't tell you. It's become so habitual, so automatic, that it runs in the background like a program they've never examined. But I'm telling you now, this unconscious inner speech is creating your life more than any deliberate visualization or affirmation you might do for 5 minutes in the morning. So the first step is to become aware. Throughout your day, pause occasionally and ask yourself, what have I been saying to myself? What's the tone of my inner voice? Is it critical or encouraging? Is it focused on problems or solutions? Is it dwelling in lack or abundance? Don't judge what you find, just notice it. Observation without judgment is the beginning of change. As you become more aware of your inner speech, you'll start to catch yourself in the act. You'll notice yourself about to say something negative or limiting, and you'll have the opportunity to choose differently. Here's a specific technique. Designate certain moments throughout your day as check-in points. Perhaps every time you pass through a torty point, doorway, you check your inner speech. Or every time you look at a clock, or every time you wash your hands. Use these moments to become aware of what you've been saying to yourself. When you catch yourself in negative or contradictory inner speech, don't fight it. Don't berate yourself for it. Simply stop and revise. If you were saying, "I'm so broke," stop and say instead, "I am wealthy. Money flows to me easily." If you were saying, "Nobody appreciates me," stop and say instead, "I am valued and respected." Say the new statement with feeling if you can. But even if it feels false at first, say it anyway. You're not trying to believe it immediately. You're interrupting the old pattern and establishing a new one. Over time, with repetition, the new pattern will become as automatic as the old one was. Pay special attention to how you speak about yourself in relation to others. Do you say, "They never listen to me," or "I always get overlooked," or "People take advantage of me"? These are powerful assumptions about your relationship to the world, and they will create corresponding experiences. Revise them to people value my input. I am seen and acknowledged. I attract respectful relationships. Notice how you speak about your body. I'm always sick. My back always hurts. I have no energy. These statements are commands to your body. Your body listens to your inner speech and obeys. Start saying instead, I am healthy. My body is strong and resilient. I am full of vitality. Your cells are listening. Notice how you speak about money. I never have enough. I can't afford that. Money is so hard to come by. These create your financial reality. Change them to, I always have more than enough. I can afford what I need. Money comes to me easily. Notice how you speak about your capabilities. I'm not good at that. I always mess this up. I'm just not that kind of person. These define what you can and cannot do. Change them to, I am capable. I handle this beautifully. I am becoming the person I desire to be. Here's an advanced technique. Carry on deliberate inner conversations that imply your wish is fulfilled. Don't just change negative statements to positive ones. Actually talk to yourself as though you're living in the reality you desire. If you want a new job, have inner conversations where you're telling someone about your wonderful new job. If you want a healed relationship, speak to yourself about how well things are going with that person. These inner conversations should be natural, casual, as though you're simply reporting what's true. I love my new job. The people are great. The work is fulfilling. Things with Sarah are so much better now. We really understand each other. Make these conversations feel real by adding details, emotions, sensations. The more you do this, the more your inner speech will naturally align with your desire. You'll find yourself unconsciously thinking from the wish fulfilled rather than of it. And when your inner speech shifts, your outer world must follow. But I must warn you, this practice requires vigilance, especially at first. Your old patterns will try to reassert themselves constantly. You'll find yourself slipping back into negative self-talk without even realizing it. That's okay. Don't get discouraged. Just keep catching yourself and choosing again. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And remember, you don't need to monitor every single thought. That would be exhausting and impossible. Just become aware of the general tone and direction of your inner speech. Is it mostly positive or mostly negative? Is it focused on what you want or what you don't want? Is it affirming your desire or contradicting it? Gently steer it in the direction of your wish fulfilled, again and again, until that becomes your new normal. The fifth practice is living from the end. This is different from the imaginal act. This is how you move through your daily life. You act as if your desire is already fulfilled, not in an obvious, artificial way, but in subtle ways that only you know. If you've assumed wealth, you don't necessarily go out and spend money you don't have, but you do stop worrying about money. You stop checking your bank balance compulsively. You think about money the way wealthy people think about it, as a tool, not as a problem. If you've assumed a loving relationship, you move through your day as someone who is loved. You speak differently. You walk differently. There's a quiet confidence in you because you know you are desired and cherished. Find ways to embody your assumption throughout the day. Small ways, natural ways, ways that feel good to you. This is not pretending. This is occupying the state. Let me give you very specific examples of what this looks like in daily life, because living from the end is one of the most subtle yet powerful practices. It's not about grand gestures or obvious behaviors. It's about the small, private ways you hold yourself differently once your assumption has taken root. If you've assumed financial abundance, notice how you feel when you see something you want. Do you immediately think, I can't afford that? Or do you think, I could get that if I wanted? The wealthy person doesn't obsess over prices. They may or may not buy something, but it's a choice, not a limitation. You begin to move through stores, through restaurants, through life with that same sense of choice rather than constraint. When bills arrive, notice your reaction. The person living in lack feels anxiety, dread, scrambling to figure out how to pay. The person living in abundance feels calm. They know the money is there or will be there. They may still budget and plan, but from a place of confidence rather than fear. Start noticing and shifting these subtle internal responses. If you've assumed career success, notice how you show up to work. Do you apologize for taking up space? Do you second-guess every decision? Or do you carry yourself with quiet authority? The successful person speaks up in meetings. They share ideas without hedging. They take on challenges confidently. You begin to embody these qualities now, before the promotion, before the recognition, before the external evidence. If you've assumed perfect health, notice how you treat your body. Do you coddle it as though it's fragile? Do you expect illness, or do you trust it? The healthy person eats nourishing food, yes, but also enjoys treats without guilt because they trust their body's resilience. They exercise from joy and vitality, not from fear. They sleep peacefully because they're not worried about their health. You begin to live this way now. If you've assumed a loving relationship, whether finding a partner or healing an existing relationship, notice how you move through your day. Do you carry yourself with the energy of someone who is lonely and searching, or with the energy of someone who is loved and complete? The loved person smiles more easily. They're generous with others because they feel full, not empty. They don't seek validation because they already have it. You embody this now. Here's a powerful technique. Ask yourself throughout the day, how would I feel if? And then live from that feeling. How would I feel if I were already wealthy? Probably relaxed about money, focused on what I enjoy, generous with others. Okay, feel that now. How would I feel if I were already in perfect health? Probably grateful, energetic, confident in my body. Okay, feel that now. How would I feel if I already had the job I desire? Probably fulfilled, purposeful, excited about my work. Okay, feel that now. You don't need the external circumstance to change before you can feel the way the circumstance would make you feel. You can generate the feeling now through assumption. And when you do this consistently, the feeling begins to feel natural. And when it feels natural, it manifests. Another aspect of living from the end is how you speak about your desire to others. The person living in lack talks constantly about what they don't have, what they're trying to get, how hard everything is. The person living from the end speaks as though it's already done. If someone asks about your job search, you might say, I'm exactly where I need to be, or the perfect opportunity is coming together beautifully, rather than, I've been looking for months and nothing's working out. You're not lying. You're speaking from a different state of consciousness. From the state of the wish fulfilled, these statements are true. You are exactly where you need to be. The perfect opportunity is coming together. You're just speaking from the end rather than from present lack. Pay attention to small moments throughout the day where you can embody your assumption. If you've assumed confidence, hold eye contact a little longer. Stand a little taller. Speak a little more clearly. If you've assumed success, dress the part even when no one's watching. Organize your workspace as a successful person would. Handle your tasks with the energy of someone who knows they're capable. These small actions seem insignificant, but they're not. They're expressions of your assumption, and every expression reinforces the assumption. You're training your entire being, body, emotions, thoughts to vibrate at the frequency of the wish fulfilled. Living from the end also means refusing to react to contradictory evidence. If you've assumed wealth and a bill arrives that you're not sure how to pay, don't panic. Don't spiral into fear. Acknowledge the bill. Know you'll handle it, but don't let it shake your assumption. Return to the feeling of abundance. Know that the means will appear because you've already assumed they have. If you've assumed health and you wake up with a symptom, don't give it power by declaring yourself sick. Acknowledge it without identifying with it. My body is working through something rather than, I am sick. Return to your assumption of perfect health. Feel yourself as healthy. Move as a healthy person would move. This doesn't mean you ignore practical steps. If you need to see a doctor, see a doctor. If you need to make a payment plan, make a payment plan. But you do these things from the state of the wish fulfilled, not from panic or desperation. You're handling temporary circumstances while remaining rooted in your assumption. The key to living from the end is consistency. It's not something you do for 5 minutes and then forget. It's a way of being that you maintain throughout your day. At first, you'll forget constantly. You'll find yourself slipping back into old patterns of thinking and behaving. That's normal. Just gently bring yourself back. Return to the state. Occupy it again. Over time, living from the end becomes natural. You don't have to remind yourself anymore. You just are that person. You've so thoroughly occupied the state that it's become your identity. And when that happens, when the assumption has become completely natural, manifestation is imminent, because you're no longer trying to be something. You are it. The sixth practice is the Sabbath rest. Once you've done your imaginal act, once you've assumed the wish fulfilled, let it go. Stop thinking about it anxiously. Stop looking for it. Stop trying to figure out how it's going to happen. Rest in the knowledge that it's done. This is hard for most people, because we're trained to work, to strive, to make things happen. But in the realm of consciousness, striving blocks fulfillment. You must rest. You must trust. You must know that the assumption you've planted in consciousness will produce its fruit in due season. When doubt comes, and it will, don't fight it. Just gently return to your assumption. Feel it again. Know it again. And then let it go again. The Sabbath is not a one-time event. It's a state you return to again and again. Let me explain the Sabbath rest more deeply, because this is where most people fail. They do their imaginal act beautifully. They feel it real. They assume the wish fulfilled, and then they immediately begin looking for evidence. They watch their circumstances anxiously, measuring whether anything has changed. And when they don't see immediate results, they panic. They think it's not working. They start doubting. And in that doubt, they cancel out all the work they've done. The Sabbath rest is the cure for this. It's the recognition that once you've assumed, the work is done. Not in the outer world yet, but in the only place that matters in consciousness. The outer world must follow, but it follows in its own time, through a path you cannot predict or control. Your job is not to make it happen. Your job is to maintain the assumption until it hardens into fact. This is what the Bible means when it says, on the seventh day, God rested. After 6 days of creation, God rested, not from exhaustion, but from completion. The work was finished, and so it is with you. Once you've assumed, the creative work is finished. Now you rest in that assumption. Resting doesn't mean you become passive or inactive. It means you stop anxiously trying to force outcomes. You stop manipulating circumstances. You stop looking for the next step. Instead, you move through your life naturally, following what feels right, taking inspired action when it comes, but never from a place of desperation or urgency. The Sabbath rest is an inner state of calm trust. It's knowing that what you've planted in consciousness must grow, must bear fruit. A farmer plants a seed and then goes about his life. He doesn't dig up the seed every day to see if it's growing. He doesn't stand over the field anxiously willing the plant to emerge. He trusts the seed, trusts the soil, trusts the season, and in due time, the harvest comes. You must do the same with your assumptions. Plant the seed through your imaginal act. Water it through your inner speech and living from the end. And then trust. Rest in the knowledge that it is done. Now, let me be practical about how to maintain this rest when doubt arises, because doubt will arise. Your circumstances may seem to contradict your assumption. People may tell you it's impossible. Your rational mind may scream that you're being unrealistic. These are all tests of your faith, of your fidelity to the assumption. When doubt comes, don't resist it. Don't berate yourself for doubting. Don't try to force yourself to believe. Simply acknowledge the doubt without giving it power. There's doubt, you might say to yourself. That's okay. But I choose to return to my assumption, and then gently, without strain, return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Do your imaginal scene again. Feel it real again. Remember why you know it's already done. Not because you can see evidence, but because you've assumed it, and assumption is the only cause. The evidence will come, but it comes after, not before. Some days the rest will feel easy. You'll move through your day with quiet confidence, not thinking about your desire at all because you know it's handled. Other days the rest will feel impossible. You'll be plagued by doubt, by fear, by the appearance of lack. On those days, be gentle with yourself. Return to your assumption more frequently. Do your imaginal act during the day, not just at night. Redirect your inner speech consciously and deliberately. The Sabbath rest is not about never thinking of your desire. It's about not thinking from lack of it. You can think about your desire from the perspective of already having it. You can feel grateful for it. You can imagine enjoying it. What you can't do is obsess over not having it, worry about when it will come, or try to force it into manifestation. Here's a helpful way to think about it. Imagine you've ordered something online and received the confirmation email. The package hasn't arrived yet, but you know it's coming. You don't sit by the door anxiously waiting. You don't call the company every hour asking where it is. You go about your life, knowing the package is on its way. You're in a state of relaxed expectation. That's the Sabbath rest. Another aspect of the Sabbath is gratitude. When you rest in the assumption, you naturally feel grateful because from that state, you already have what you desire. You're not grateful for something you hope will come. You're grateful for what is. This gratitude reinforces the assumption and maintains the rest. But avoid forced gratitude. Don't try to feel grateful as a technique to make something happen. That's still striving. True gratitude arises naturally when you've genuinely assumed the wish fulfilled. You feel grateful the same way you feel grateful for anything you already have in your life. The Sabbath rest is, ultimately, about trusting consciousness itself. You're not trusting in your ability to make things happen. You're not trusting in external circumstances or people. You're trusting in the law that consciousness creates reality. You're trusting that your assumption, persisted in, must manifest. This is not blind faith. It's trust based on understanding the principle. And here's the beautiful thing. The more you practice the Sabbath rest, the more you see it work, the easier it becomes. Every time an assumption manifests, your trust deepens. You learn experientially that resting works better than striving. You discover that letting go brings what holding on prevents. And eventually, the Sabbath rest becomes your natural state. You don't have to try to trust. You just do. The seventh and final practice is persistence in assumption. This is what ties everything together. You must persist, not in forcing or struggling, but in returning. Return to your assumption. Return to the feeling. Return to the wish fulfilled. Again and again and again. Some assumptions manifest quickly because they feel natural to you. Others take longer because they require a deeper change in your sense of self. But all assumptions persisted in must manifest. This is law. Time is simply the interval between assumption and manifestation, and that interval is determined by the naturalness of your assumption. So don't give up. Don't let the persistence of old facts convince you that your assumption isn't working. The facts are changing, even if you can't see it yet. The bridge is being built even if you don't know its form. Persist. Be loyal. Stay faithful, and you will see your assumption harden into fact. Now, let me speak to you about persistence at a deeper level, because this is where the real test comes. Anyone can assume something for a day, a week, even a month. But what happens when months pass and nothing seems to have changed? What happens when circumstances actually seem to get worse? What happens when everyone around you tells you to give up, to be realistic, to accept what is? This is when persistence becomes everything. This is when you discover whether you're truly committed to your assumption or whether you were just hoping for a quick fix. This is when you prove to yourself and to consciousness itself that you are the operant power, not a victim of circumstances. Persistence doesn't mean blindly maintaining an assumption while ignoring reality. It means maintaining your assumption while acknowledging present circumstances but not being bound by them. You see what is, but you know it's not final. You recognize current facts, but you don't give them the power to determine future facts. Let me tell you about a man who demonstrated extraordinary persistence. He wanted to heal a relationship with his son that had been broken for 5 years. They hadn't spoken in all that time. The son had completely cut him out of his life. Everyone told him to accept it, to move on, to stop hoping for reconciliation. The circumstances were absolutely clear. The relationship was dead. But he understood the law of assumption. Every night for over a year, he imagined embracing his son. He felt the warmth of that embrace. He heard his son's voice saying, "I love you, Dad." He revised every painful memory from their past. He lived from the end where they were close and loving. And he persisted even when months passed with no contact, no sign, no evidence that anything was changing. There were times when doubt nearly overwhelmed him, times when he wondered if he was deluding himself, times when the pain of the estrangement made it hard to maintain the assumption. But he kept returning, again and again, back to the feeling, back to the assumption, back to the wish fulfilled. And then, after 13 months of persistence, his phone rang. It was his son, and the first words out of his son's mouth were, "Dad, I love you. I don't know why I waited so long to call." They reconciled completely. The relationship was not just restored, but deepened beyond what it had ever been. This is the power of persistence. The assumption was working all along, even when there was no visible evidence. The bridge was being built in the invisible realm, and when it was complete, it appeared in the physical world seemingly overnight. But it wasn't overnight. It was 13 months of faithful persistence. Here's what you need to understand about persistence. The length of time it takes for an assumption to manifest has nothing to do with the difficulty of the desire, and everything to do with the naturalness of the assumption. If you can assume wealth as naturally as you assume breathing, wealth will appear almost immediately. But if assuming wealth feels forced or unnatural, if part of you doesn't believe it's really yours, then it will take longer. Not because wealth is hard to create, but because you need time to make the assumption feel natural. This is why I always say, the time it takes is determined by you, not by the desire. A small desire that feels unnatural to you will take longer than a big desire that feels completely natural. So if you want to speed up manifestation, work on making your assumption feel more natural. Live from it more consistently. Feel it more deeply. Let it become part of your identity. But even as you work on naturalness, you must persist, regardless of how long it takes. Because here's the truth. Your assumption is always working. From the moment you assume, the creative forces of consciousness are set in motion. The bridge is being built, The pieces are being moved. The invisible is becoming visible. You just can't always see the process. You only see the result once it's complete. This is why evidence is so tricky. The absence of visible evidence doesn't mean your assumption isn't working. It just means the manifestation hasn't completed yet. It's like being pregnant. For months, there's no visible sign. The woman might even wonder if she's really pregnant. But all along, the baby is growing in the invisible realm of the womb. And then suddenly, undeniably, the baby appears. Your assumptions are the same. They're gestating in consciousness. And the gestation period varies depending on the assumption. Some manifest in days, some take months or even years, but they all manifest if you persist. So how do you persist through the waiting period? How do you maintain your assumption when nothing seems to be happening? Here are some practical strategies. First, focus on the practice, not the result. Make your daily imaginal act, your inner speech correction, your revision, make these practices themselves the goal. Don't do them to get something. Do them to be someone. You're not trying to manifest. You're being the person who already has the manifestation. When you shift your focus from getting to being, the waiting becomes easier. Second, look for small shifts. Manifestation rarely happens in one dramatic moment. Usually, it unfolds through a series of small changes, a slightly different attitude in yourself, a minor improvement in circumstances, a new opportunity that wasn't there before. These small shifts are signs that your assumption is working, that the bridge is being built. Notice them, appreciate them, let them encourage you. Third, diversify your assumptions. Don't put all your focus on one major desire while ignoring everything else in your life. Work with multiple assumptions. Practice the law in different areas. This keeps you from obsessing over any one manifestation and builds your confidence as you see various assumptions come to pass. Fourth, remind yourself why you trust this law. Not because you hope it works, but because you understand the principle. Consciousness creates reality. Assumption is the only cause. This is not wishful thinking. This is the fundamental nature of existence. When doubt comes, return to the principle. Remember that you're not hoping or wishing. You're applying law. Fifth, and perhaps most important, be willing to persist as long as it takes. Don't set deadlines. Don't say, if it doesn't happen by next month, I'll give up. That's not faith, that's bargaining. True persistence says, I will maintain this assumption until it manifests, whether that takes a day or a decade, because I know it must manifest. This level of commitment is rare, but it's also undefeatable. I've seen people give up 1 week before their assumption would have manifested. I've seen people abandon their assumption after months of faithful practice, only to later discover that circumstances had been aligning perfectly, and they quit right before the breakthrough. Don't be that person. Persist. Stay loyal. Remain faithful. The manifestation is always closer than you think. And remember, persistence doesn't mean suffering. You don't have to white-knuckle your way through this. Persistence can be joyful, peaceful, even playful. You're not trying to force reality to bend to your will. You're simply occupying a state in consciousness and allowing reality to conform to that state. There's a lightness to this, a sense of play. You're creating your world through imagination, like a child creates through play. It's meant to be enjoyable, not burdensome. So persist. But persist with joy. Persist with trust. Persist with the knowledge that you are the operant power, and what you persist in assuming, you must inevitably experience. This is not faith in something outside yourself. This is recognition of your own divine nature. You are consciousness. Consciousness creates reality. Therefore, you create your reality. And you create it through assumption, persistently held. Now we've come to the end of this journey together. And if you've stayed with me this far, if you've truly heard what I've been sharing, you're not the same person who started listening. Something has shifted in you. A seed has been planted, and whether you know it or not, your world is already beginning to conform to this new understanding. You came here perhaps seeking a technique, a method, a way to get what you want, and I've given you that. But more than that, I've given you a mirror. I've shown you who you really are. Not the limited, struggling, victimized person you thought you were, but the infinite creative power, the very consciousness that dreams worlds into being. The 21 teachings I've shared are not rules to follow. They're descriptions of how your consciousness already works. You've been creating your entire life. The question now is, will you create consciously or unconsciously? Will you create by design or by default? Every moment of your life, you are imagining. You're imagining who you are, what you're capable of, what's possible for you, and those imaginations are hardening into the facts you call your life. The circumstances you face, the people you know, the opportunities that come or don't come, all of it is the outpicturing of what you've been imagining. But now you know. Now you can't unknow. You are the operant power. You are the one who determines what appears in your world. Not through action alone, not through effort alone, but through assumption, through the conscious direction of your own marvelous imagination. From this moment forward, you need never feel powerless again. You need never petition or beg. You need never wait for permission from a universe that is nothing more than your own wonderful human imagination pushed out into manifestation. You are the author of your story. You are the artist of your life. You are God, imagining. Think about what this means for your life right now, today. Whatever circumstance you're facing, whatever challenge seems insurmountable, whatever desire seems impossible, it's all just consciousness. It's all just your imagination, taking form. And what imagination has created, imagination can uncreate and recreate anew. Are you struggling financially? That's a state of consciousness. Assume a different state and your finances must change. Are you lonely, longing for love? That's a state of consciousness. Assume yourself loved and love must appear. Are you suffering in your body, feeling limited by illness or pain? That's a state of consciousness. Assume perfect health and your body must conform. I'm not saying these changes happen magically or instantly, though sometimes they do. I'm saying they happen lawfully, inevitably, when you persist in your assumption. The law of consciousness is more reliable than the law of gravity. It never fails. It cannot fail. Because consciousness is the only reality, and what you are conscious of being, you must become. Let me speak now to those of you who have tried other teachings, other methods, other laws. You've tried affirmations and they felt hollow. You've tried visualization and it seemed to change nothing. You've tried attracting and manifesting and working with energy, and you're exhausted and discouraged because nothing has worked the way you were promised. I want you to understand something. Those methods often fail because they start from the wrong place. They start from lack. They assume you're here and your desire is over there, and you need to attract it, pull it, manifest it toward you. But that assumption of separation is the very thing that prevents fulfillment. What I'm teaching you is different. I'm not teaching you to attract anything. I'm teaching you to become it, to occupy the state where it already is, to be it now in imagination so completely that the physical world has no choice but to conform. This is not about getting. This is about being. And when you are, you have. And here is the mantra I leave with you, the words I want you to return to again and again whenever you feel lost or doubtful or afraid. I am the operant power. No circumstance can bind me, for I am is the substance from which all circumstances are formed. I do not become I am. I do not attract. I embody. I do not hope, I assume. And in that assumption, sustained and felt, my world must conform. Say these words, feel them, let them sink into your consciousness, because they're not just affirmations. They're statements of truth about who you are. You are the operant power. There is no power greater than your own consciousness. There is no force outside of you that can stop you. There is no circumstance that can bind you. Because you are the creator of circumstance through your assumptions. Now, I want to give you something practical to do right now, today, this moment. Don't wait. Don't say you'll start tomorrow, or when things calm down, or when you have more time. Start now. Choose one desire, just one, something you truly want, something that would make a real difference in your life. And now, right now, assume it's yours. Not that it will be yours, that it is yours. Feel what it would feel like if it were already accomplished. What would change in you? How would you hold yourself differently? What would you say to yourself? How would you move through the world? Occupy that state right now, not for 5 minutes as a technique, but as a way of being. Be that person. Live from that place. Think from that end. And do it consistently, persistently, faithfully, until the invisible becomes visible and what you assumed in consciousness manifests in your world. And as you do this, as you begin to see your assumptions harden into facts, don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Share it, not by preaching or trying to convince anyone, but by living it, by being the example, by demonstrating through your own life that consciousness creates reality. Because the world needs more people who understand this law. The world needs more conscious creators who know they are God. Imagining, I want to address something else before we close. Some of you may be thinking, this sounds wonderful, but I've failed so many times before. I've tried to change and couldn't. I've tried to create what I want and failed. Why would this time be different? And I say to you, every failure was simply a success in creating what you actually assumed, not what you hoped for. You weren't failing. You were succeeding perfectly at manifesting your true assumptions. The problem was never with the law. The law always works. The problem was with your assumptions. Maybe you assumed, I always fail, or nothing ever works for me, or I'm not good enough. And those assumptions manifested perfectly. You created exactly what you expected to create. The law worked flawlessly. But now you understand. Now you can choose your assumptions consciously. Now you can assume success, assume worthiness, assume that everything works for your good. Your past does not determine your future unless you assume it does. Every moment is a new opportunity to assume differently. You are not bound by history. You are not imprisoned by genetics or environment or circumstances. You are free. You have always been free. You just didn't know it. And for those of you who feel guilty about desiring material things, worldly success, physical pleasure, let go of that guilt. There is nothing unspiritual about desire. God, which is your own wonderful human imagination, is in the desire as much as in the fulfillment. The impulse to create, to express, to experience this is divine. Honor your desires. Assume their fulfillment. Use the law to build a beautiful life, but also remember what I said about the promise. At some point, after you've fulfilled many desires, after you've demonstrated the law again and again, you may discover that no external achievement truly satisfies the deepest longing in you. And then the promise begins to awaken. You begin to wonder not how to get more things, but who you truly are beyond all things. You begin to seek not new states to occupy, but the awareness that occupies all states. This is the ultimate revelation. This is where all the teachings ultimately lead, to the recognition that you are not a person having imaginative experiences. You are imagination itself, having the experience of being a person. You are not in the world. The world is in you. You are not in consciousness. Consciousness is all there is, and you are it. When this realization dawns, when you truly know yourself as the I am, as the eternal awareness in which all states rise and fall, then you're free in a way that transcends even the freedom of manifesting desires. You're free because you know that whatever appears or disappears, whatever is gained or lost, whatever is experienced or not experienced, none of it changes what you are. You are the unchanging witness of all change, the eternal presence in which all time occurs, the infinite awareness in which all space appears. But you don't have to wait for this ultimate realization to benefit from what I've taught you tonight. Start where you are. Use the law for your immediate desires. Transform your circumstances. Create your ideal life, and know that each manifestation, each demonstration of the law, is preparing you for the deeper revelation. So test this law. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to test it. Choose an assumption, persist in it, and watch what happens. When you see your assumption harden into fact, when you witness the invisible becoming visible through the power of your own consciousness, you won't need my testimony anymore. You'll have your own proof. You'll know beyond any doubt that what I've told you is true. And when that happens, when you've proven the law to yourself, come back and watch this again. You'll hear it differently. You'll understand it more deeply. Because truth reveals itself in layers. Each time you return to these teachings with more experience, with more consciousness, you'll discover new depths you didn't see before. If this teaching has stirred something within you, if it's awakened even a flicker of recognition, I invite you to do something. Don't just listen and move on. Act. Apply what you've learned. Choose your assumption. Do your imaginal act. Revise your inner speech. Live from the end. Persist. And then, when you see results, come back and leave a comment. Share which of the 21 teachings resonated most deeply with you. Share what you assumed and what manifested. Because your story will inspire someone else who's listening, someone who needs to hear that this law truly works. Subscribe to this channel if you want to continue this journey into the depths of consciousness. There is so much more to explore, so many layers of this teaching to unpack. The Bible alone contains thousands of years of encoded wisdom about consciousness and creation, and I want to share all of it with you. Share this video with anyone who's ready to receive it. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone is prepared to accept that they are the creator of their own reality. Most people prefer the comfort of victimhood, the excuse of circumstances, the safety of powerlessness. But for those who are ready, this message will change everything. It will set them free. And I want you to know something. I'm not special. I'm not a guru. I'm not a master. I'm not enlightened in some way you're not. I'm simply a man who discovered the truth about consciousness and tested it until I knew it was real. Everything I've shared with you tonight, I've lived. Every teaching, I've proven. Every principle, I've applied. And if I can do it, you can do it. Because there's no difference between us except that I've awakened to what you're awakening to now. We're the same consciousness, the same I am, expressing through different forms. And what I've realized, you can realize. What I've manifested, you can manifest. It's not about me. It's about the law. And the law works for everyone equally, impersonally, reliably. It doesn't favor anyone. It doesn't require any special ability or talent. It simply requires understanding and application. And now you have both. So take this teaching into your life. Hold it close. Return to it when you forget. Let it guide you when you're lost. Let it strengthen you when you doubt. Let it comfort you when you're afraid. Because these are not just words. This is the truth of your being. This is the secret of creation. This is the key to freedom. You are God. Imagining. You've always been God. Imagining. You'll always be God. Imagining. The only question is, what will you imagine? What will you assume? What will you create? The answer is entirely up to you, because you are the operant power. You are the author. You are the artist. You are the dreamer, dreaming the dream of your life. From this moment forward, imagine lovingly, imagine generously, imagine boldly, but above all, imagine consciously, because conscious imagination is the difference between being a slave to circumstance and being the master of your fate. Go now. Live these teachings. Test this law. Prove it to yourself. And when you do, when you see your assumptions harden into facts, when you watch your imagined states become your lived reality, you'll know beyond any doubt that everything I've told you is true. You are the creator. The power is within you. It's always been within you. And now that you know it, nothing will ever be the same. Not because your circumstances will magically transform overnight, though they may, but because you will transform. You will know yourself differently. You will see reality differently. And from that new consciousness, a new world must emerge. This is not goodbye. This is hello. Hello to the real you. Hello to your power. Hello to your freedom. Hello to your divine nature. You are waking up. The dream is becoming lucid. And as you awaken, as you realize you are the dreamer, you gain the power to dream differently. So dream a beautiful dream. Dream a loving dream. Dream a dream that honors your deepest desires and your highest aspirations. Dream a dream that brings joy not only to yourself, but to all those who share this consciousness with you. Because we are all one. And when you heal yourself, you heal the world. When you free yourself, you free everyone. When you awaken, you help awaken all of consciousness. This is the work. This is the play. This is the eternal creative act of God, knowing itself through infinite forms. And you are it. You have always been it. You will always be it. Now go. Create. Imagine. Assume. And above all, be what you truly are. The infinite I am, dreaming the dream of life into being, one beautiful assumption at a time. Imagine, lovingly. Live consciously. And remember, you are God, imagining, and the whole vast world is your imagination pushed out. Let that truth set you free. Let it empower you. Let it transform you. And let it create through you a life more wonderful than you ever dared to believe possible. Because it is possible. It's not only possible, it's inevitable. When you assume it, when you persist in it, when you become it, then you have it. And you will know, beyond any shadow of doubt, that you are the creator you've been seeking, the power you've been worshiping, the God you've been praying to. You are it. You are all of it. You always have been. Welcome home. Say this to yourself. Feel it. Let it sink deep into your consciousness. Because it's not just a nice affirmation. It's the literal truth of your being. You are the power that creates worlds, and you create them every moment through the assumptions you hold about yourself. So test this law. Take one of these teachings and apply it. Don't just think about it, do it. Choose something you desire. Assume it's already yours. Feel it, live in, persist in it, and watch what happens. Watch as the bridge of incidence appears. Watch as your assumption hardens into fact. And when it does, when you see undeniable proof that your imagination creates your reality, don't thank the universe. Don't credit luck or chance or fate. Thank yourself, because you are the one who did it. You are the power that made it real. But remember, the ultimate purpose of all this is not to get things. It's to awaken to who you truly are. Things will come and go. States will rise and fall. But you, the awareness behind it all, you remain. You are the eternal I am, the unchanging consciousness in which all change occurs. Every desire you fulfill, every assumption you manifest, is consciousness, knowing itself more deeply. You're not really gaining anything external. You're discovering more of what you already are. You're exploring the infinite possibilities of your own being. And there comes a point on this journey when you realize that no external achievement, no material success, no worldly recognition truly satisfies. Because what you're really seeking is not out there, it's in here. What you're seeking is the remembrance of your own divinity, the awakening to your own infinite nature. That's the promise I spoke of earlier. And it comes when it comes. You can't force it. You can't manifest it like you manifest a new car or a better job. It comes as a gift, when consciousness is ready to see itself clearly. But until then, live fully, create freely. Use this law to build a beautiful life. Use it to help others. Use it to bring your gifts into the world. There's nothing wrong with desire. There's nothing unspiritual about wanting things. God is in the desire just as much as in the fulfillment. Just remember that you are not the body wanting. You are consciousness, experiencing itself as a body, as a person, as a life. You are the dreamer, dreaming the dream. And the moment you forget this, the moment you identify completely with the dream character, you suffer. But the moment you remember, you're free. So, if this teaching has touched you, if something in it has resonated with the deepest part of you, I invite you to take action. Not the action of doing more or trying harder, but the action of applying what you've learned. Choose one teaching, one practice, one assumption, and work with it, live it, prove it to yourself, and then, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me which of the 21 teachings resonated most deeply with you. Tell me what you're going to assume. Tell me what you're going to create, because your stories, your experiences, your awakenings, they inspire others who are on this same journey. And if you want to continue learning, if you want to go deeper into these mysteries, subscribe to this channel. There's so much more to explore, so many layers to unpack. The Bible alone contains thousands of years of encoded wisdom about consciousness and creation, and I want to share it all with you. Share this video with anyone who's ready to hear it. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone is ready to accept that they are the creator of their own reality. That's okay. But for those who are ready, this message will change their life. It will set them free. And know this: I'm not anyone special. I'm not a guru or a master or a saint. I'm simply a man who discovered the truth about consciousness and tested it until I knew it was real. Everything I've shared with you, I've lived. Every teaching, I've proven. Every principle, I've applied. And if I can do it, you can do it. Because there's no difference between us, except that I've awakened to what you're awakening to now. We're the same consciousness, the same I am, expressing as different individuals. And what I've realized, you can realize. What I've manifested, you can manifest. Because it's not about me. It's about the law. And the law works for everyone, equally. So take this teaching, hold it close, return to it again and again. Let it become part of you. Let it transform how you see yourself and your world. And most importantly, let it set you free. Free from the belief that you're a victim. Free from the belief that circumstances control you. Free from the belief that you're separate from the power that creates and sustains all things. You are that power. You've always been that power. You'll always be that power. The only question is, what will you do with it? What will you imagine? What will you assume? What will you create? The answer is entirely up to you, because you are God, imagining, and the whole vast world is your imagination pushed out. Until we meet again, I want you to remember this. Imagine lovingly, imagine generously, imagine boldly, but above all, imagine consciously. Because conscious imagination is the difference between being a slave to circumstance and being the master of your fate. Go now, live from these teachings, test this law, prove it to yourself. And when you do, when you see your assumptions harden into facts, when you watch your imagined states become your lived reality, you'll know beyond any doubt that everything I've told you is true. You are the creator. The power is within you. It's always been within you. And now that you know it, nothing will ever be the same. Imagine lovingly, live consciously, and create the world you were born to inhabit. This is not goodbye. This is the beginning of your conscious creation, the beginning of your awakening, the beginning of your recognition that you are and have always been the infinite I am, dreaming the dream of your life into being. Now go and create something beautiful.